Right, onto the 1940s. And Ken, you're another area of expertise from your good self. We've got two watches here. We've got the Radiomir Panerai and we have the IWC Pilot. So,
well, these mean a lot to me because when I first started out in watches, the first ever vintage piece I bought was a British military watch from a company called Vertex, and it was one of what's now known as the Dirty Dozen. Now, the reason they're emblematic of the 40s is that for the first 5 years of that decade, the Swiss watch industry, the American watch industry, they were focused on one thing, and that was wartime. Now, what that did for the watches was it elevated things like functionality, chronographs improved, legibility improved because pilots needed to see the watches, durability improved because of an infantryman out in combat needed a rugged watch. Things like the luminosity changed, water resistance, absolutely every practical aspect of watchmaking improved. The thing that fell by the wayside pretty much was the civilian watch. So there really are no incredible standouts from the 1940s to match, say, the Calatrava that we just looked at. What we have here are two of the most important, the children of two of the most important watches of them all. Starting with this is a Panerai Radiomir. And although it was designed in the tail end of the 1930s for the Italian Navy, it didn't really come into usage until the war hit. And because it was the Axis powers rather than the Allies, the two navies that got use of this was first and foremost the Italians, and it was used by their saboteurs. And the German Navy used it as well for the same purposes until the Italians came over to the other side. What this was an exercise in creating a waterproof watch, which was still a big deal in the 40s. Although companies like Rolex in the 20s had come out with what I believe was the original Oyster, and Omega produced a watch with two cases in the 30s, they were still flawed. Rolex not so much, but this really represented a major leap because it had a screw-down crown, and Rolex was actually involved with this.
it was a Rolex-based movement, wasn't it?
It was a Rolex-based movement supplied by Cortebert, which was improved by Rolex and supplied to Panerai. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Panerai wasn't a watch company, it was a retailer and a supplier of materiel to the military. It was like the surplus stores in the United States in the 50s. It supplied not scuba gear so much as early diving equipment, bullhorns, amazing stuff that said Panerai. This particular model was the first because it's also well known for the notorious clip that holds down the crown. This is a screw-down crown as opposed to a pressure device. But if you look at a watch like this, and you can imagine, you're in combat, you're underwater, you're setting charges, you don't get higher visibility than this. The amusing thing about it, and why I'm holding one, is that Panerai was very prescient in the early 1990s when watch collecting was exploding and military watches were still affordable. The only people that knew about Panerai were hardcore Rolex collectors and hardcore Militaria collectors. And the company was still private before it was purchased by what later became Richemont, issued a very limited series of 2 or 3 models. And
which you have.
Which,
one of them.
Yeah, my son's already after those. Yes, I'm lucky enough to have 3 of the models before Richemont took over and turned it into the global success we know it to be. But the miracle for them, which is completely unplanned, is Sylvester Stallone falling in love with them.
Yes,
gifting one as well to Arnie Schwarzenegger,
yes.
And both of them featured them in films.
Yeah.
And when that happened, boom.
Yeah.
You know better than I. How did the sales go after that?
Ridiculous. In the mid-90s, I think it ran around the
Vertical.
90s, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. That was boom time for Panerai at that time, for sure.
Well, now they're a major brand.
For sure.
Absolutely a major brand.
And the other one we have here?
This is even closer to my heart because, as I said, my first piece was one of the Dirty Dozen. Now this is a definitive pilot's watch, whereas the Dirty Dozen were infantry watches. But the thing that was common to both, white Arabic numerals, a triangle at the 12 so that you know that the watch is right side up, an impermeable case, and in fact the actual name of the Dirty Dozen was WWW for wrist water resistant, whatever.
Okay.
I'm having a lapse at the moment, but it was British MOD, the Ministry of Defense, commissioned at the tail end of the war watches for the infantry. Now, they weren't actually delivered, I think, until right after the war ended, but around the same time, IWC was one of the 12. IWC's watch stood out in that it also has been adopted by IWC enthusiasts as the Mark 10. And the difference between that and this is it had small seconds instead of sweep. But this is part of a noble series, which I've just been informed by your good self is coming out as the Mark 20.
Correct.
Which means that this particular model has been around for nearly 80 years. And for anyone who wants a pilot's style watch, this is about as good as they get. This eschews all of the matters of chronographs and multiple colors on the dial and case materials. This is as honest a military watch as you can buy without actually signing up. And it's that nice size where we were discussing with the previous decade, that size has gone up and down. At one point there were watches on the market of 55 millimeter, which only worked on, say, Schwarzenegger's wrist. They look like little clocks rather than big watches. This is comfortable in every way, and what the earlier version didn't have is a really nice flexible bracelet. They were all issued with leather or canvas straps. I suppose part of the reason would be that if you're in night maneuvers, this would reflect.
Yeah.
Whereas a matte black or any canvas strap wouldn't reflect light. But this is buying heritage. And these are two of my favorite watches out of the 100 or so that I have.
Very impressive.